We're going to talk today about being kind, and kindness is so important. And I really believe that people look at Christian women and people look at Christian men, and if there's not an element of kindness to us, there are people that don't even believe that we're really Christian. That's really scary, isn't it? So I want to talk today a little bit about kindness, and not because I'm an expert on it. I am not an expert on kindness, that's for sure. There are times when I feel like running in circles and screaming and shouting, and it was funny this morning because it's been so hot, and my husband, we were all getting ready for church, and he says to me, like, the only cool place we have in our house is our bedroom, because I told him if we don't have an air conditioner in there, I'm leaving you. I said, I can't take it. I can't get to sleep at night. It's so hot. So about 2 years ago, we put an air conditioner in our bedroom. And so that was going all night long, and he goes out and sleeps on the couch because it's too cold for him. Okay, so I have it on 78, right? 78. That's yeah. 78's fine. You know, that's not cold. And he sleeps with like the covers over his head and stuff because I have it on 78. Anyway, not to tell you about him, but so this morning he feels like it's cooled off outside. Well, we can turn the air conditioner off. And do you know, like, I was getting lunch ready for today and ironing stuff and all of that, and I was so hot. I went in the room and it was hot again too, and I just wanted to scream at him. I'm serious. I just wanted to say, what are you thinking? I'm an old lady. I need coolness. But then I had to say, oh, I'm teaching on kindness this morning. So I can't do that. I need to be nice. And he said something about, because he could see I was like dripping. So he goes, if you need to turn the air back. I said, it's okay. It's only 10 minutes till we're out of here, so it will be fine. But I really did want to scream and yell. Anyway, okay, Job 34, and we're going to look at verse 18. Is it fit to say to a king, thou art wicked, and to princes, ye are ungodly? And verse 19, how much less to him that accepteth not the persons of princes, nor regardeth the rich more than the poor, for they are all the work of his hands. Those scriptures are just saying we're all the work of God's hands. Whether someone's rich or whether they're poor, they deserve our kindness. We should not base how nice we are to people on who they are, their status in life, how much money they have. If they're similar to us, we treat them well. If they're different than us, we treat them poor. No, we need to treat everyone with kindness. It's really important. God accepts everyone. Any sinner that comes to him and says, I want forgiveness, he never looks down his nose at him and say, you're too bad a sinner. And we should do the same. We should treat everyone with kindness. They deserve it. And then let's turn over to Acts 10. And so much of this I know you know, and I know you're always kind, but I guess I needed this today. Okay. Acts 10. And let's look at verse 34. It says, then Peter opened his mouth and said, of a truth, I perceive that God is no respecter of persons. So, in God's eyes, we're all level at the foot of the cross. There's none of us better than anyone else. And then also, let's look over at Matthew 5. I have a couple of scriptures, and then we'll go into the lesson. Matthew 5. Let's start in verse 44. But I say unto you, love your enemies, bless them that curse you, do good to them that hate you, and pray for them which despitefully use you and persecute you, that ye may be the children of your Father which is in heaven. For he maketh his sun to rise on the evil and on the good, and sendeth rain on the just and the unjust. And then one more scripture in Matthew 25. And look at verse 35. Verse 35, Matthew 25:35. It says, "For I was an hungered, and you gave me meat. I was thirsty, and you gave me drink. I was a stranger, and you took me in. Naked, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you visited me. I was in prison, and you came unto me." Then shall the righteous answer him, saying, "Lord, when saw we thee a hungered, and fed thee, or thirsty, and gave thee drink? When we saw thee a stranger, and took thee in, or naked, and clothed thee? Or when we saw thee sick, or in prison, and came unto me?" And the king shall answer and say unto them, "Verily I say unto you, inasmuch as ye have done it unto one of the least of these my brethren, ye have done it unto me." And so we see there the Lord, how good and how gracious He is, that He says that when we reach out to someone that's in need, when we help someone, it's as good as doing it right unto Jesus Christ Himself. And so that kindness is so important in our lives. And that's something you just can't fake. You can't fake being kind to people, because sooner or later you'll snap at them. You'll get angry. You'll get put off by them. You'll be running the other direction or whatever. But, everyone's important to God. There's no one created that's not important to God. I don't care who they are. You might say, well, I'm in a foreign country and everyone looks the same to me. No, but each individual is important to God. They are a soul, and they deserve to know about the Lord and to be treated properly. Everyone deserves to be treated with kindness. The grace of God is toward everyone. It's not toward just us Gentiles, It wasn't just towards the Jews. God opened it up for us Gentiles to be grafted in, just like God wants to open it up to anyone who wants to accept Him as Savior. We may think that we're better than someone else. We might look at our neighbor and think, oh, well, I go to church and I do this and I do that and I, keep my yard up, right? Whatever it may be. And you might look over at your neighbor and think, oh, they're not as good as I am. You know what? That's not right. Like, we should love them. We should be kind to them. And, it may be that someone may come into church and maybe they look different. Maybe they smell different. I've sat in places in church where you could tell someone around you had some habits that were running into your airspace, and you just, it was all you could do. But you know what? Be kind to them. They may not realize that, people struggle with some of the habits that they may have. And we just have to be really careful about that. We ought to not get this attitude of I'm so much better than them, ever. And I was thinking about that with our bus kids, too. I heard one preacher's wife, and she said, don't ever call them bus kids, call them children that ride the bus. And I just thought, you know what, that's true. Like, maybe by us saying bus kids, it's almost like categorizing them, like they're a lower class citizen. I know at one point in time in our church, we would separate the kids, and we still do somewhat, because with the drive-ins, you get more consistency. They're here more often. They tend to be, probably more well-trained at home, so they can grow faster in certain Bible teachings and everything. And then with the kids that ride the bus, and it's more inconsistent, it's hard to get them here on a regular basis. Sometimes there's, a little bit difference in acting out or not acting out. And so we separated the kids out, but we called it A and B classes. We didn't call them, these are the good kids, these are the bad kids, or anything like that, because we want to give dignity to each of the kids to know that they're still special. There's nothing wrong with them. And, I even think of people that have special needs. And I know, and you mentioned to me one time, I don't want to embarrass you, but she was saying in Korea, like, isn't it true when somebody has maybe a handicap, people kind of stay away? Do you want to say anything about that?
We can use amusement or something, so we can.
Yeah.
We went to Disneyland and so surprised because every wheelchair person, everyone can use everything, but we can't.
Right. Over there, the handicapped people are kind of pushed aside or kept indoors. And she was saying she was just so amazed when she went to Disneyland because, they put them on the rides, they helped them with their wheelchairs or whatever apparatus they had, and they were treated as regular people. I mean, they get in the line faster than the rest of us. No, you know what I'm saying? And she was so amazed by that. And I'm thinking, no, that's the way it should be. Someone has a handicap, I really think they should be treated in a way better than everyone else. We ought to be concerned for them, or if we see them having trouble, help them walk up the stairs, or, you know what I'm saying? I think they should be treated really good because they have an infirmity they have to live with.
I wish that too, but I have them too.
Yes. I know you see that too, Tina, with where you live at times.
I used to be teased a lot in school and made fun of because they thought I was different,
Right.
But I have emotional disability.
Right.
It's really hard.
But you know what? Different is not bad. And that's what we need to get through our minds. Different is not bad. They're still valuable people. And in God's eyes, He loves them all just the same. He still had to send Christ to die for people. What can I do to be kind? Well, I was thinking, we can encourage each other just by volunteering to do things to help people out. Going out of your way to do something for someone. Maybe you hear someone's without a car. Maybe you volunteer to take them somewhere. I had a friend call and say, I just can't drive right now. Can you take me to a couple of doctor appointments? You know what? No problem. And did I have extra time? Probably not, but I can rearrange my schedule enough to where I can still get my jobs done and take her to a doctor's appointment and, have lunch with her or whatever needed to be done. And, it's good for us to go out of our way just a little bit for others. We have to think back and think, why am I the way I am? Why do I keep a clean house? Or why do I have kids that are somewhat obedient? Or, why? Because someone invested in me. I grew up in a home where my mother was extremely clean. You didn't even sit on the couch because you might mess up the pillows. She was one of those, She kept the house really, really nice. And she taught me clean, 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 clean. And, and so I'm the way I am, which is not perfect, anywhere near as good as my mom, but still, you can live in my house and not die of germs, but somewhere in the middle ground. But my mom invested in me. And do you know there's a lot of children that grow up in homes that their parents don't invest in them? They don't teach them how to do things. They might have dad absent or dad and mom both working, or, maybe they just don't know how to keep things up in the home. And so they've never been taught that. And here's what we do. We go out for ladies soul winning, or we go and we think, oh, I'm not going to go in that house. That looks messy in there. I can hardly walk through the living room. I remember times when all my kids were young. And I used to feel like we just need a path from the front door to the bedroom. You know what I'm saying? Kids, you can pick up and 15 minutes later it can look like a bomb went off, Yeah. So, but we need to realize the way we are, it's because someone invested in us. And we need to be willing to invest in others. I had one lady say to me, there's someone that's trying to raise a lot of children, and she said to me, well, actually it was Debbie Pride. Debbie Pride's so funny. She said to me, we need to have someone move in with that lady for about 3 weeks and just teach her how to be a mom. I was like, 3 weeks, huh, Debbie? And she goes, yeah, someone with a lot of kids, a big family that knows how to do it. I'm looking at her going, Debbie? She goes, oh, I didn't mean it had to be you. I'm like, Debbie, what are you trying to say here? And of course, the whole time I'm getting under conviction, like, would I really do that for someone? Would I move into someone's home for a few weeks and try to teach them how to be a mom and how to keep the house up and how to cook a meal and all of that? That's a huge investment into someone's life. Would I be willing to do that? I'm not going to answer the question, you know? Seriously. I mean, but you think about it, and you think about the people out there that no one's invested in their lives, you know? And here we are, someone's invested in our lives, so we've learned things over the years, and so we start to think we're better than others, you know, and we're not. It's still level. We're still at the foot of the cross. It's still level. We need to break the cycle. Break the cycle of, you know, not knowing how to take care of things and not knowing how to, you know, discipline children, and break the cycle of not, you know, staying married to who we marry and those type of cycles. And those people that go through those things, they don't know better sometimes. You know, it's been generational over and over and over again. You know, like, for instance, I've talked to ladies who've said to me, well, if my marriage doesn't work out, I'll just get a divorce. And I looked at them like, what, are you serious? And they said, well, my parents got divorced, his parents got divorced. It's not that big a deal, you know. We can find someone else. And I'm looking at them saying, are you kidding? Do you know what that does to the children? Do you know? It just shocks me. Like, I just think that's the worst advice you could give someone is just call it quits.
I'm going through it now.
Yes, I know you are. Thank you. But even things like nurturing children, how do we learn that? I learned it from my mom. But not everyone has a mom that nurtures their children, you know. And I learned it from other church ladies. I really did. I used to go over to other church ladies' houses when I was a new Christian and just bring my babies and hang out and nurse together and watch our kids together and learn things along the way. And you know what? That was such a blessing to me. I had one girlfriend, she'd always come over and she'd bring her kids and she'd say, the first thing she'd say when she got there was, what's for lunch? I'd say, lunch? I haven't even thought about lunch. And she goes, okay, well, let's get this done and then we're going to start lunch. And I'm like, okay. And she would help me get the laundry going and just, she knew I was overwhelmed. I probably had either 3 or 4 little ones and in a little house, and I would just get to where I was just overwhelmed. By the time I'd finished nursing the baby, the toddler had made a mess in the bathroom, and you know what I'm saying? It was all so overwhelming. And she would come over. She invested in my life and helped me to get organized and helped me to have vision for what it could be. And she was such a blessing to me. But I need to be willing to be that to someone else and just be kind. What about a good cook? You know, I hear of a lot of moms, and I'll be honest, I'll just kind of think, oh, how can they do that to their kids? But they'll say, oh, we stopped at McDonald's last night and Burger King tonight, and oh, it's Jack in the Box tomorrow. And I'm thinking, how can you raise your children like that? Like, that's so unhealthy. But do you know there's a lot of ladies out there that have never been taught to cook?
I used to have it. I helped my mom cook when I was first married.
Right, that's good. And see, your mom invested in you, taught you how to cook. That's so important, but we don't realize that. Like, all we do is think, oh my goodness, they feed their kids like that, you know? But who's going to invest in them? Who's going to teach them how to cook? I loved it when I used to go over and to a friend's house and they'd be cooking dinner, you know, and I would just sit there and watch what they put together. And sure enough, the next night I'd be home imitating and putting the same stuff in the pot and turn out almost as good as theirs. And, you know, but we shouldn't turn up our nose at them if they don't know how to do that. No one invested in them. I think about even like being healthy, you know. Someone taught us that stuff. Like, I remember going to school and learning about, all that junk. calories and, you know what I'm saying, the fats and the carbs and, but a lot of people don't know any of that stuff. I learned about go to college and learn about how exercise is so important to your body and all that sort of thing. Hi, girls. And, but you know what? There's a lot of people that have never learned that stuff and they don't know. And they think it's okay, just to hang out all day and not get a walk in or not get a little bit of exercise time or whatever. And no one's ever told them. Or they may have heard it and just thought, But to be really taught something, sometimes you have to walk through it with them, like call them up and say, let's go for a walk. I had a friend that she'd always call me and say, let's go for a walk. And I'd say, why do you think I'm overweight? She'd go, well, I need the walk. And I'd say, okay, then I'll go with you. That sounds great. And I knew it was because we were both, but anyway, we won't go into that. Or just being kind. Like there's people that do not know how to be kind, how to give out a kind answer. All the time I go through different places and I'm just amazed at the way people treat someone that's waiting on them. I mean, they're standing there trying to get their drink order or trying to, buy something at the store or something. And the customers nowadays are so rude to people. It just amazes me. Like, it's almost embarrassing because a few of the places that I go, I walk in and they'll call me by first name or, hi, how you doing? Do you want the usual? Like, they always know me at Chipotle. And my husband's like, how do they know you? And my kids will say that too. And I'll say, because I'm always nice to them. And I'll be honest, a lot of times I'll give them a tip. I figure I'm buying a $4 meal. I buy a kid's meal. Anyway, I won't tell all my secrets. But I'll buy the kids' meal. And the rest of the change, which is 93 cents or whatever, I'll always give them the tip. And they always go, thank you, And why? Because I want to be kind to them. So often I've given them a track and invited them to anything special we ever have going on. So they know me when I walk in there. You know what? What if I was grumpy to them every week? Would they want to be nice to me? Would they put extra chicken on my taco? Would they, you know what I'm saying? Like, I always ask for extra lettuce because I pretend I'm eating a salad, upside down or whatever. And I always say, can I have a little extra lettuce? And they're always like, sure. And then a couple of the ladies now, they just take a big scoop and plop it. I'm like, oh, thank you so much. You made my day. Just be kind to people instead of saying, don't do this, don't do that. How about people that don't know how to be hard workers? Some people have never been taught how to work hard. And it's amazing. You think that they were raised with maids or something, the way they work. They're like, they don't get in and scrub things or whatever. Sometimes that has to be taught. And just because someone isn't super duper on that doesn't mean that those of us that are have to look down our noses at them. There's still that kindness. How about this? This one's a tough one. We notice someone dresses immodestly, and we look down our noses at them, and we think, oh my goodness, why is she wearing that? Especially like our teen bus girls might come in or our regular teenagers or whoever, and we'll look down our noses at it. But have we ever stopped to say, I'd love to take her shopping? I'd like to take her out and get her something to wear. You say, well, I can't afford that. Go to the thrift store. Make it into a fun day. Say, hey, have you ever been to the thrift store? Let's go check it out, I'll help you, and I'll get you a skirt or two, and I'll get you, a couple cute tops. And, she would be thrilled. And it doesn't have to cost a lot of money. But reaching out to others. Her mom might never have taught her modesty. I remember growing up in a home where as long as private parts were covered, you were modest. And you kept your figure up so you'd look good in those little things that you could put on. And I was never taught any differently, Grew up in the Catholic Church, and it's certainly not talked about there, other than, don't roll your skirt up too high, But I didn't know those things. And I remember when I first got saved, and I asked one of the ladies, so what does everyone wear? Because I get saved, it would have been July 29th, 1979. And I remember asking the preacher's wife, I said, what does everyone wear to the picnic? Because there was going to be a big Memorial Day picnic, I think it was, or Labor Day, probably Labor Day. And so she said to me, oh, well, I said, do they wear shorts or long pants? And she goes, well, she was so kind about it. She didn't say shorts or long pants. She said to me, well, most of the girls make these they're kind of a little bit baggier pants, and they're called culottes. And I was like, culottes? Okay, I never heard of those before. And she said, oh, yeah, a lot of the girls just make their own, or they wear, a jean skirt or something like that, so they're comfortable. And I thought that was so sweet because, she could have put me down and made me embarrassed. And do you know what I went to the fabric store that very day, bought fabric, made a pair of culottes for the next day because it was a Sunday and I made them for Monday. And they were so impressed. They were like, where did you get those? And I said, oh, I made them. And they were like, what? You did that in one night? Yeah, I've been sewing for years. Anyway, wasn't a big deal. But you know what? It was said to me so nicely. They were so kind to me that I just said, I can do that. I'll be glad to do that. No one looked down their nose at me or, anything like that. It was such a blessing. So, take her shopping. Okay. The true measure of a man is how he treats someone who cannot repay. That's a saying, but I think it's very, very true. We want to treat each other nice because we're peers and we know each other and we get along with each other and we feel comfortable with each other. But how do you treat someone who can't repay? That's a lot harder, isn't it? The other thing about kindness is never make fun of people. And if you have children, don't let your children make fun of people. Now, I will have to say that there's a very fine line between imitation and making fun of people. Because I've watched young people do imitation in a fun way that's not ungodly. And, even do it in front of the people that they're imitating. And they pick up on little quirks and that sort of thing. Hi, good to have you. And they're just, it's imitation can be a form of flattery. So I'm not saying that, but I'm saying to actually make fun of people and laugh about people, especially if people have infirmities. From the time my children were little, I told them, do not stare at people that are different than you. Do not say anything, You have little kids and they say things right off the top of their heads, and sometimes you can't control it. You can have someone in the wheelchair in the mall and some little kid walk up and say, where are your legs? Or they can just say all kinds of things, but children, people that have infirmities, accept that from little children. But we need to start teaching them as they grow to be kind and not point out people's differences and all of that. Let's see. Let's turn over to Leviticus 19. We're almost through. Leviticus 19. Easy lesson today. I know you all are so kind all the time. You're saying, if you only knew. No. Leviticus 19 and verse 15. It says, you shall do no unrighteousness in judgment. Thou shalt not respect the person of the poor, nor honor the person of the mighty. But in righteousness shalt thou judge thy neighbor. That's sort of not treating people with money better than we treat others, or not treating poor people less than we treat others. Be kind to everyone. Children can be cruel, but adults can be cruel too. And I was thinking also in the way of children, teach them to give preference to other people. Like I've always taught, especially my sons, if you get on a bus and there's a lady standing, you always offer your seat. If you're in an office or somewhere, you open the door for people. You get out of your seat and give it to someone else. You know, simple manners like that. Our children should be taught those things. And it's so important for kindness to reign in Christians' lives. Let's see. Oh, have you ever thought about this? Have you ever thought about giving money to someone who needs it? You say, what? Where did that come from? We were talking about kindness. Where did that come from? I don't know how many times I've heard of someone, you know, having a really, really rough time that we just anonymously dropped groceries off. I mean, we used to have a lot of fun doing it. You could ask some of the ladies that have been here around for years. But, you know, putting groceries on the front porch or putting an envelope in the offering labeled for somebody or something like that. Just, it doesn't have to be so you get the glory, but just thinking about someone else. How about this? Here's a way to be kind. Let someone else tell a story without one-upping them. Do you know what that means? You know, like, oh, I've got a better story. No, listen to their story. You know, I have a hard time with that because I like to yak. I'm sure that's why my husband put me in this job. Probably cuts down on how much he has to listen to. I'm just kidding. Let someone else vent. And don't say anything. Just let them vent. And then say, oh. And just let them talk for a few minutes. Sometimes people just need to talk. I have ladies from really, truthfully, around the world, sometimes that they just need someone to talk to that isn't going to talk to anyone else about them. You know, I think of especially pastors' wives, and they've got a church and congregation, and they can't tell. Sometimes they get frustrated with things. And just to talk to someone and just to be able to say, it's okay, you know, this too shall pass, and that sort of thing. Listen to someone. Do something nice for someone. Go out of your way for someone. How about this? This is part of kindness. I'm sorry, I was wrong. That's a really hard part of kindness, isn't it? You know? I've many times walked in the kitchen, who left this mess? You know? And I'm sorry, I was wrong. If I find out it was my husband, I'm really embarrassed because he hardly ever leaves me messes. He's so good about it. But you know what? He shouldn't have to clean up after himself. Like, I think that's my job. Why? Because he goes out and makes the money. He pays all the bills. That's the least I can do, is be kind. And if he needs stuff picked up after him, just do it. But sometimes I get frustrated. I think, who left this mess? And I think it's the kids, you know. So then I have to say, I'm sorry, I was wrong. That's hard. Be teachable. Value other people's knowledge. Be teachable. Forgive when wronged. These are just some tips for being kind. Assume the best. Offer to take someone somewhere. Be willing to change your plans to accommodate them. Tell someone, this one really hit me because I thought, this is something I need to be doing more. Tell someone you have potential. You can do it. You can make it. We try to, you know, if we hear someone's gone off to college or the military or something like that, you know, drop a card in the mail for them. You know, our Sunday school class, we should do that as a class, but individually. Do something like that. Give someone some hope. Be kind to someone who can't repay. This is a really hard one. Offer to babysit for a mom that can't pay for it or can't afford it. Offer to babysit? Are you kidding? You just told me you're taking your 2 granddaughters for a week. That's awesome. That is so sweet. That is kind. Learn to give preference to someone else. My daughter said, I love this part of being pregnant. She said, here I walked in the grocery store. I had a basket full of stuff. And do you know, 2 people let me go ahead of them? I said, that was so nice. She goes, this being pregnant stuff, it's definitely got some benefits. And I just thought, you know what? That's true. People treat you nicer when you're pregnant, but don't get pregnant just to find out. But, give someone else preference. If I see someone, I've got a basket full of stuff and someone just has a couple things, a lot of times, if I'm not in a major rush, I'll say, please go ahead of me. Or just if I want to talk to them a little bit, just be kind to them. And not just if you want to talk, but be kind to everyone. And then be a friend who loves, not a needy friend. Be a friend who just wants to reach out to people and don't expect something in return. So let's be kind. That's a lesson for today. Father, thank you so much for your love, for people who invested in our lives. Help us to invest in others. Lord, some of us have family to invest in, and some of us should be reaching outside of our families and investing in others and helping people and looking for the needs of others. And Father, I just pray that you would help us just to be in tune with your Holy Spirit. In your precious name, amen.